one of the most celebrated plays of Oscar Wilde, in which
एक इधर भी
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches not for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
And by the way, Ray, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Showman and Mr. Worthing were dining here, 8 bottles of champagne I entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I asked merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in my household, the champagne is rarely of first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself. I have been married only once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
But I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, eh?
Now, sir, it is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Ray. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ray's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the law orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else you been anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
But I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
Oh, in the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
Got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire.
Perfectly fine. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them then. By the way, Shropshire is your company, is it not?
Shropshire, yes, of course. Why all of these cucumber sandwiches and teacups? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Oh, yes, that's all very well. But I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
Why not?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is very disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I'm in love with Gwendolyn. I've come down to town to propose to her.
I thought you'd come down from business. I mean, pleasure. I call it business.
Oh, how utterly unromantic you are.
I don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Alright, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I can quite believe that. Divorce throws some light for people. Memories are so curiously custom as yours.
Oh. Divorces are made in heaven. Oh, please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're made specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you've been eating them all the time.
But that is a different matter. She is my aunt. Oh, have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And it's good bread and butter too.
Then, my dear fellow, you need not eat as if you were going to eat at all. You act as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you will ever be.
Why? How could you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Isn't it? It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolyn is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you have to clear up this old question of Cecily.
Cecily. I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Lane, bring me that pocket watch Mr. Worthing left in the dining the last time you were here.
Yes, sir.
You mean to say you've heard my pocket watch all this while? I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I had been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was nearly about to offer a large reward for it.
But I wish you would offer a large reward. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
But what is the point of offering a reward for it once the thing is found?
Well, I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. But it doesn't matter anymore. Because when I look at the inscription inside, I see that the thing isn't yours after all.
It is mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside somebody's pocket watch. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to do so.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. I think more than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I'm quite aware of that. And I don't wish to discuss moral culture with you. It is not the sort of thing that we talk about. Now, can I have it back?
Yes, but this isn't your pocket watch. This pocket watch was a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you really want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming lady she is. Lives in Tunbridge.
But why does your aunt call herself Little Cecily if she's your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells?
But some other call, some other call. What is the point in that? You seem to think that all aunts should be like your aunt.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? I mean, there is no objection to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt? No matter what her size may be. She called her nephew or uncle. I can't quite imagine. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest, you look as if your name was Ernest, and you're the most earnest looking person I've ever seen in my life. It's perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. Oh, it's on your cards, look. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing V4 the Albany. I'll give this as a proof if ever you attempt to deny this to me, to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, if you want to know, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. and this pocket watch was given to me in the country. Now can I have that back?
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, you'd much better have the thing out at once.
Well, produce my pocket watch first.
Oh, well, here it is. Now, pray, produce an explanation. And make it improbable.
Well, my dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about the explanation. The fact is, when late Mr. Thomas Cardi, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me the guardian of his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardi. Cecily, who now addresses me as uncle, from whatever respect that you would far from possibly understand, lives in my part of the country under the charge of a valued governess, Miss Prison.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that has nothing to do with you, my dear boy. And let me tell you, you are never going to be invited there.
Well, I suspected that. I may mention quite candidly that I have bun braid all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now you might wonder what bun braid is. But first, before I tell you what that is, you must tell me why you need Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, the fact is, when one put in a position of authority, or as a guardian, one has to adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. The fact is, in order to be able to go up to town, I wanted pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany, and gets into one of the most dreadful scrapes. That, my friend, is entirely pure and simple.
The truth. It's rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, and modern literature would be a complete impossibility.
And that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Now, literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave that to people who haven't been to a university. They do it very well in the daily papers. Now, what you really are is a bun. I was quite right in saying, am I not, that you were a bun brace? You are one of the most advanced bun brace that I know.
What do you mean by a bun brace?
Well, you have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, in order that you might come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable, permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I might go down to the country as often as I choose. Now, Bunbury is perfectly invalid. If it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I would not be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's.
But I haven't asked you to dine with me.
I know. You're very careless about giving out invitations. You know, it is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You better have dined with your Aunt Augusta tonight.
Oh, I haven't the slightest intention of doing anything of the kind. You see, to begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to be dining with your own relations. In the second place, whenever I am down there, I'm treated as a member of the family, and I'm sent there with either no woman at all, or two. In the third place, I know who she's going to put me next to tonight. She's going to put me right next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it's not even decent, and that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. Besides, now that I know that you're a confirmed bun brace, I want to talk to you all about bun brace. I want to tell you all the rules.
I'm not a bun brace at all. In fact, if I marry Gwendolyn, I will get rid of mine. In fact, I think I will get rid of him anyway. Cecily is a little too much interested in it. It rather is a bore. And I strongly advise you to do the same with your infinite friend with the absurd name.
Nothing's going to induce me to part with bun brace. And if you ever get married, which seems to me to be extremely unlikely, I suggest you do the same. A married man who does not know bun brace has a very tedious time of it.
Why would you say that?
Well, if you don't know bun brace, then your wife will. You don't seem to realize, my dear boy, that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
My friend, that is a theory that the French drama has been propagating for the last 50 years.
Oh yes, yes, and the happy English home has proved it half the time.
Don't try to be cynical. It is perfectly easy to be cynical.
Oh, it isn't easy to beat anything nowadays. Such a lot of beastly competition about it. must be Augusta. Only relatives of predators ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out to me for 10 minutes so that you can do your proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is very shallow.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
I hope you're behaving very well.
And I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Well, you are looking quite smart today.
Oh, I always look smart. Do I not, Mr. Worthy?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for development. And I tend to develop in many directions. I am sorry if you're a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Carberry. You see, I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and those nice cucumber sandwiches, promise me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolyn? Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Nay, where are the cucumber sandwiches?
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
What? No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta. There are no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had a few crumpets with Lady Carberry, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Oh, I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
Certainly has changed its colour. From what cause I, of course, cannot say. You know, I have quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a nice woman, and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
Well, I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It will put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact of the matter is, I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes. Poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that this Mr. Bunbury made up his mind as to whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathies with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is a primary duty of life. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday. But I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that encourages conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has said practically all that they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta. He is still conscious, of course.
Of course.
Of course. The music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays bad music, then people don't listen. And if one plays good music, then people don't talk. But if you run over the program I've drawn out, I think you'll find something to your liking. If you'll just accompany me to the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Archie. It's very thoughtful of you. I'm sure it will be a delightful program. After a few expurgations, French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they are improper, and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German seems a thoroughly respectable language, and I believe it is indeed so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me? Yes, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Hey, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever someone talks to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
Well, I thought so. In fact, I'm no wrong.
I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
Well, I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I've met you, I've admired you more than any woman I've ever met since I've met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of that fact, and I often wish that in public at any rate you had been more demonstrative. For me, you always had an irresistible fascination, even before I met you at the park. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive ones in magazines, and has even reached the provincial pulpits, I'm told. And my ideal has always been to love someone with the name of Ernest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Alison first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Gwendolyn, you really love me?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've been.
Oh, my own Ernest.
But you don't mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Ernest.
I know it is Ernest, but supposing it was something else, you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Well, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of life as we know them.
Well, to speak quite frankly, Gwendolyn, I don't think this name suits me at all.
Oh, it suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has a music of its own. Seduces the wildest.
Well, to tell you quite frankly, I think there are much nicer names. Jack, for instance, is a much nicer name.
Jack? No, there is very little music in the name Jack. If any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, have been more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman married to a man called John. She would probably never be without to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. No, the only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, you must get christened at once.
What?
I mean, we must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Yes, you know that I love you, and you led me to believe that you're not completely indifferent to me.
Oh, I adore you, Ernest, but nothing has been said at all about marriage. You haven't proposed to me yet.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I would certainly advise you to do so, and to spare any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it is only fair for me to tell you that I am fully determined to accept.
Gwendolyn?
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it? I'm afraid you have very little experience in how to propose.
You're the only girl I ever saw in my life who I will marry. Thus have very little experience in it.
Yes, but men often propose for practice, don't they? I know my brother Gerald does. Oh my God. Brown. I hope you will always keep me like
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from that embracing prostrate is most indecorous.
Mamma, I was begging to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished.
Finished? What, may I ask?
Mr. Worthing and I are engaged to be married, Mamma.
Pardon me, Gwendolyn. You're not engaged to anyone. Drop that hand, Mr. Worthing. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions I would like to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me in the carriage. In the carriage, Gwendolyn! Gwendolyn! In the carriage!
Lady Worthy. I would prefer standing.
Mr. Worthy, I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Wilde has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you hunt?
I must admit, I do.
I'm glad to hear it. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. What is your age?
Between, 29.
A very good age to be married at. I am of the opinion that a man who desires to be married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Brown.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. In fact, the whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, it fails to produce any effect whatsoever. I'm talking about a big education, of course. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year, ma'am.
In land or in investments?
In investments chiefly.
What is satisfactory?
I also have a country house with some land attached to it, about 1,500 acres of it. But I don't depend on that for my daily living.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that question can be settled afterwards. You do have a town house, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn can hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I have a town house in Belgrade Square, which is lent out to Lady Blossom.
Lady Blossom? I don't know her.
Yes, she goes about very little. She's considerably advanced in a year.
Ah, that is no guarantee of respectability of character these days. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
Oh, the unfashionable side. I thought there was something. That can soon be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, I presume, if necessary. What are your politics?
I'm a liberal.
Oh, the Countess Tories. They dine with us. Or come in the evening at any rate. Now down to minor matters. Are your parents living?
No, I've lost both my parents, Lady Blackman.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthy, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born, as the radical papers say, the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, the fact is, Lady Blackman, I had said that I lost my parents. But it would be nearer to truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I really don't know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman with a very charitable and kind disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket that time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with the first-class ticket to the seaside resort find it?
In a handbag.
Yes, a black leather handbag with handles on it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. J. Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
At Victoria Station. It was at the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him for mistake of his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station.
Yes, the bright line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I must confess that I'm quite bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life. As for the locality in which the handbag was found, the cloakroom room at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, but it can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
But what would you have me do then? I needless say that I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness.
I would strongly suggest, Mr. Worthing, that you try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't know how I could do that. I could produce the handbag at any moment. It is then my dressing that should satisfy you.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that Lord Bracknell and myself could dream of letting our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a castle. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Stop with the ghastly duality! So idiotic you are!
Did it go off all right, old boy? You don't need to say Gwendolyn refused you. I know it's the way she has. She's always refusing people. I think it is very ill natured of her.
Oh, Gwendolyn is as right as rain. As far as we are concerned, we're engaged. But her mother is perfectly unbearable. Now about such a goblin. I really don't know what a goblin is, but I'm pretty sure Lady Bracknell is one. I'm sorry, Auntie. I shouldn't be talking to you like this. I shouldn't be talking to you about your aunt.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only use one has for them. Relations are simply a tedious pack of wolves who haven't got the remotest knowledge of how to live, not the smallest instinct about when to die.
You always talk nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue about things. You always want to argue about things.
Sir, that was what things were originally made for.
If I thought that, upon my word, I would shoot myself. You don't mean to say Gwendolyn will become like a mother in 150 years or so?
All women become like their mothers. That's their tragedy. No man does, and that's his.
Is that clever?
It's just perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in modern civilized life ought to be.
Everyone seems to be clever now. You cannot go out anywhere without meeting clever people. It has become a public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools like that. I would really like to meet them.
We have.
I would really like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? About the clever people, of course.
Why?
Speaking of fools, did you tell Gwendolyn the truth about your being honest in town and Jack in the country?
Well, that is the sort of truth that you do not tell a sweet, innocent girl like Gwendolyn. You really don't know how to behave with women, do you?
The only way to behave with a woman is to make love to her. If she's pretty, and to someone else if she's plain.
Oh, that is nonsense.
And what about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
I should say he was kind of in Paris due to apoplexy. A lot of people die quite suddenly due to apoplexy, don't they?
Well, yes. But it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in the family. You would much better say something else. A severe chill.
Are you sure a severe chill isn't hereditary?
No, of course it isn't.
Very well. My brother Ernest was carried off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of it.
But I thought you said that your ward, Miss Cecily Gardew, was a little more interested in your brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, Cecily is not a sinner like this girl. She's got quite a capital appetite, goes for long walks, and does not pay any attention to her lessons.
I should rather like to meet Cecily.
I shall take very good care that you never do. If excessively pretty and only just 18, my friend.
Well, have you told Gwendolyn that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Well, you don't blurt out things like that to people. I can tell you anything that Jasmine and Gwendolyn will be best of friends. They will be calling each other sisters in half an hour.
No. Women only call each other sisters when they've called each other a lot of other things. By the way, if you are to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go up and dress. Do you know it is nearly 7?
It always is nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew when you weren't.
What shall we do after dinner? Shall we go to the theatre?
Oh no, I love listening.
Well, we might go to the club.
Oh no, I hate talking.
Well, we could trot around to the Empire again.
Oh no, I can't look at those things. They're so silly.
Then what shall we do?
Nothing.
It is awfully hard work doing nothing. But I don't mind doing nothing. Not when there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax?
Gwendolyn, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Wilde.
Really, Gwendolyn, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly moral attitude towards life. I don't think you're quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Anna, you can never be married. From the expression on Mama's face, I fear we never shall. But although we may not become man and wife, and I will marry someone else and marry often.
Gwendolyn?
Nothing can possibly alter my eternal devotion to you, darling. The story of your romantic origin, as narrated to me by Mama, with unpleasant comments, has naturally disturbed the deeper fibers of my nature. The story of your romantic origin is utterly delightful. You're to an address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The manor house?
Yes. You're a gentleman, you would.
Yes. The manor house, Hertfordshire, Woolton.
Is that all?
Yes, that is all.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. I may have to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration.
Mama.
How long remain time, dear?
Till Monday.
Are you in turn round now?
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me escort you to your carriage, won't you?
Of course, dear.
Lane, I'm going to escort Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Dane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Dane, I'm going Bunbury.
You would like me to pack your luggage, sir?
Oh, yes. You can pack my smoking jacket, all my dress clothes, and my Bunbury clothes, of course.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow is a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Intelligent girl I ever saw. Whoever now. What are they so amused?
Nothing. I'm just anxious about more Bunbury, that's all.
Well, if you don't get rid of Bunbury, you will get into a dreadful scrape.
But I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that is nonsense.
Nobody ever does talk anything but nonsense.
Take a 10-minute break now, ladies and gentlemen.
Cecily! Cecily! But I don't like German at all. It isn't all that language. And I look quite plain after my own test. But child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve your test every day. He makes 30 good tests on the German and he's putting for down. Indeed, he's always gives tests on the German and he's putting for down. Your uncle that is so very easy. But that is not really bad. I think he cannot do quite well. Your guardian enjoys the rest of it. His gravity of demeanor is, especially with the amazing one, so comparatively young as he is. I don't know one who has a high sense of duty and responsibility. I suppose that is why Uncle Jack looks a little too bored when the three are together. Cecily, I'm surprised at you. Come here. Your guardian has many troubles in his life. I will experiment in geography to be out of place in this conversation. You must remember his concept entirely about that unfortunate young man, his brother. I wish Uncle Jack would allow an unfortunate young man to come down here sometime. Cecily, we would have a good influence over this prison. I'm sure you certainly would. You know German and geology, and things of that kind influence a man very much. I do not think that I could predict anything on Friday that, according to his own recognition, is extremely weak and vaccinated. Indeed, I'm not sure that I would decide to reclaim it. I'm not in favor of the spontaneity of turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he be. Cecily, you must keep away your diary. I really don't see why I should keep a diary at all. I keep a diary that is a wonderful series of life. If I didn't write that down, I would probably forget all of it. Never mind, Cecily. It's a diary that you all write about it. Yes, but if you keep talking to the fact that has never happened, and that couldn't possibly have happened. And I believe that memory is responsible for all the 3-volume novels nowadays. What these writings of the 3-volume novels is like? I don't know myself about it. Tiwari was how wonderfully clever you are.
Unavailable at online.
I hope it is not that happy. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much. Well, the good ended happily. And the bad are happy. That is what it should be. I suppose so. But it is very unfair. And was your novel ever published, Miss Prison? Alas, no. The manuscript was a lie. I use the word in the sense of loss, honestly. But to your work child, these speculations are profitable. But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden. Dr. Chasuble! This is indeed a pleasure.
Miss Prism, and how are you this morning? You are, I trust well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining about the slight headache, Dr. Chasuble. A short stroll with you in the park would do her so much good. But especially, I have not mentioned anything about the headache. Yes, Miss Prism, I know that. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. And I was thinking about that and not my German lesson at the
I hope, Cecily, you're not being inattentive.
Well, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. But I'm fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil. I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from the beef. Mr. Worthing has returned from town yet.
Oh, we did not expect him back till Monday out.
He usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He's not one of those whose sole aim in life is enjoyment. As for all accounts, that unfortunate young man, his brother seems to be. Oh, but I must not disturb Ejira and the pupil any longer.
Hede, my name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely, drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see good, no doubt, as the evening fares.
Dr. Chasuble, I think I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all. And a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
Oh, that would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may. It is somewhat too sensational. Even this metallic problems have to remain on the magic side.
Yes, certainly.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him.
Here's the start.
Yes, press. disappointed. I told him that you and Miss Prism were in the drawing room. He seemed anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest for you to come in. And I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about the room book.
Yes, miss.
I think I have never really met a wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm afraid he will look just like everybody else. Oh, he does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I presume.
You are under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe that I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. And you, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's cousin. My cousin Anne. My wicked cousin Anne.
Wicked? But I'm not wicked at all, my cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you are not, you have been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, being really good all the time and pretending to be wicked. That would be hypocrisy.
Well, I suppose I have been rather reckless. In fact, now that you mention it, I have been very bad, in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, although I think it might be very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I don't understand why you're here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back until Monday afternoon.
That's a great disappointment. I am obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere in London?
The appointment is in London.
Oh, well, I know how important it is to not keep a business engagement if one has to retain any sense of beauty of life. But I think you had better wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to talk to you about your emigrating.
What? My what?
You're emigrating. Uncle Jack has gone up to buy your outfit.
My outfit? I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties at all. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, at dinner on Wednesday night, Uncle Jack said to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the reports that I've received of the next world in Australia are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
But are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me.
Well, I'm afraid I have no time for this afternoon.
Well, would you mind me reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather difficult for you, but I think you should try.
Certainly. I feel better already.
But you look a little worse.
That's because I'm hungry.
Not possible. I should have remembered that whenever one is going to lead an entirely new life, one should need regular and wholesome meals when you come in.
Yes, but might I have a buttonhole first? I never seem to have an appetite if I don't have a buttonhole.
A mash and meal?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that.
Why not?
Miss Prison never says things like that to me.
Well, that's because Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prison says all good looks are a snare.
But they're a snare that every sensible man would like to be courted.
I don't think I would catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about. You are too much alone, Dr. Jasmine. You should get married. A misanthrope, I can understand. A philanthrope, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve a neologistic of praise. The priest as well as the practice of the Pyramidal Church want to speak like his matrimony.
Well, that is obviously the reason why the Pyramidal Church has not lasted up in the present day. And you do not seem to realize, Dr. Jasmine, that the person is simply remaining single. A man can also say permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy reconnects history.
But is a man as equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive. Except to himself.
And often I have been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. understand you, Jasmine. What did you ask me? I saw horticulture. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps he followed us to the school.
Mr. Wilde.
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Jasmine, I hope you're doing well.
Mr. Worthing, I trust the scarf of coat does not betoken in some terrible calamity.
My brother, he's dead.
Your brother Ernest, dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for me. I trust you to properly.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolences. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were the most forgiving and generous of brothers.
He had many faults, yet it is a sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him in the end?
No, he died in Paris. I received a telegram from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of the death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
Ayushi, so shall we eat?
Charity, Susan, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am particularly susceptible to dogs. Will the interment take place here?
No, it will take place. He expressed desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? That party points to any serious state of mind in the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna can be adapted to almost any occasion, be it joyful,
Can it?
or, as in the present case, distressing. As feast and harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, days of jubilation and feastal days. The last time I delivered it was at the cathedral, and the bishop present there was quite impressed by the analogy there.
Oh, I'm sure.
You mentioned christenings, Mr. Dr. Jasper. I hope you know how to christen all right.
Well, it is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have always spoken to the classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant you're interested in, Mr. Worthing? Your brother, I suppose, was unmarried, was he not?
Oh yes, he was unmarried.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But the fact is, I'm very fond of children. But this is not for any child. I would like to be christened myself if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
Do you have any great doubts on this subject?
I intend to have the gravest done. I don't know if this would bother you in any way, or you would feel I'm too old for it now.
Not at all. The sprinkling and the immersion of
The immersion?
You need have apprehensions. The sprinkling is all that is necessary. Or in fact, I would say advisable. English weather is so changeable. At what hour would you like the ceremony to be performed?
I could start around at about 5. Is that okay with you?
Perfectly. In fact, I have two similar ceremonies being performed at the same time. A case of twins that happened in your estate recently. Poor Jenkins the carter, the most hard-working man.
But I don't think that is much fun in a christening along with children. It would seem to chime. How about 5:30, Joe?
Admirably. And now, Mr. Worthing, I have not been too any longer in this house of sorrow. I was merely begging not to be too much bowed down by me. What seems to us as bitter trials are really blessings in disguise.
It seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind. Uncle Jack, I'm so glad to see you back. But what horrid clothes have you got on? Cecily, do go and change them.
My child, my child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack? You look happy. You look as though you had a toothache. But I have got such a surprise for you. What do you think is in the dining room?
Who?
Your brother?
Who?
Your brother Ernest, where I about half an hour ago.
I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that, Uncle Jack. However badly he may have taken you in the past, he still is your brother. And you're not so hard for us to disown him. I will ask him to come in here, Uncle Jack. And you will shake hands with him, won't you?
These are joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to make me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it is perfectly absurd.
Hello.
Good heavens!
Brother John, I've come down from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for all the trouble I've given you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Dad, you won't refuse to shake your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand, and he very well knows why.
Pretty nice, Uncle Jack. There's something in everything. Honest has just been telling me about his friend, Mr. Bunbury.
So he has been talking about Bunbury.
Yes, Ernest has told me all about Bunbury and his terrible thing.
Well, I won't have him talking about Bunbury about anything else. It is perfectly enough to drive anyone frantic.
Well, I admit the faults are all on my side, but I must say that I find Brother John's coldness towards me peculiarly painful, especially considering that this is the first time I've visited here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
This shall be the last time I shall ever do it.
It is good, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? We must leave the two brothers alone now.
Cecily, you will come with us. Studying this prism, my little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, my child.
We must not be premature in our judgment. I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, you have to get out of this place upon me. I will not allow any Bunbury in here.
I have put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to yours, sir. I hope that is all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I have put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage.
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has just been gone back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called anywhere.
You have been gone back to town.
But I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasure in the slightest.
I can quite believe that.
Well, Cecily is a darling,
You are not to talk of this kind like that. I don't like it.
and I don't like your clothes. You're perfectly ridiculous in them. I am not going to go up and change. It is very childish for you to be in deep mourning for a man who is staying with you in your own house for a week as a guest. I think it's grotesque.
You're not staying here for a week or anything of that. You've got to leave by the 4-5. I will not allow any Bunbury there.
Well, you won't get your own way then.
You have got to leave. This Bunbury, as you say, is not very successful for you.
Well, I think it has been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go. Ah, there she is.
I merely came back from my yard. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
No, he's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he taking you for a nice drive?
No, he's going to send me away.
Oh, then have you got to part?
Yes, I'm afraid so. It's a very painful part.
Oh, it is always painful to part from people one has just been introduced to. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation from anyone whom one has just been introduced to is almost unbearable.
Thank you, Cecily.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merryman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
Cecily, I hope I shall not offend you if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be, in every way, the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Your diaries? But I'd give anything to look at the diary. May I?
Oh no. You see, it was just a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, consequently meant for publication. I hope you will all copy when it comes in modern form. But pray, Ernest, don't stop. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. Now go on. I'm ready for more. Don't cough, Ernest. Whenever one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. And besides, I don't even know
Cecily, from the moment that I looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I dare to love you, wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should be telling me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, and hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it, Ernest?
Cecily,
The dog card is at the door, sir.
you can wait till next week for all I care.
Yes, sir.
Would be very much annoyed if he knew that he was staying until next week.
I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone at all in the whole world. But you, Cecily, you will marry me, won't you?
Of course, you silly boy. Why? We've been married, we've been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it'll exactly be 3 months this Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack confessed to me that he had a brother who was wicked and bad, you of course have found the chief topic of conversation between myself and his cousin. And a man who's talked about very much is always attractive. One thinks there must be something in her drawers. And I dare say it was foolish of me, Ernest, but I fell in love with him.
And when was the engagement settled?
Before this February last, prior to her entire ignorance of my presence, I determined to end this matter this way or the other. After a long struggle with myself, I accepted you in this wisdom. And the next day I bought this ring in your name. And this love bangle, which had true love was not that I always promised you.
Did I give you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
You are wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It is the excuse I've given for your leading such a bad life. And here are the letters that you wrote for me.
Letters? But Cecily, I never wrote you any letters.
Oh, you need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write them for you.
Well, I'd give anything to look at it, may I?
Oh no, I couldn't possibly allow you to look at them. They would make you far too conceited. The 3 letters you wrote to me after an engagement was broken off are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I cannot read them without crying a little.
Was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather will continue to come.
Why on earth did you break it off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I'm very hurt that you broke off our engagement, particularly when the weather was so charming.
But it wouldn't have been a very serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. And besides, I'd forgiven you before the week was out.
Oh, what a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
Oh, you dear romantic boy. I hope you had naturally like this.
Yes, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You will never ever break off our engagement again, will you, Cecily?
Oh no, I don't think I could, possibly, now that I have met you. And besides, of course, there's the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it had always been the girlish dream of mine to love somebody of the name of Ernest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any woman whose husband was not called Ernest.
My dear child, do you mean to say that you could not love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Well, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, what can possibly be wrong with the name of Algernon? It is not at all a bad name, and in fact, it's a rather aristocratic name. Half of the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, do you mean to say that you could not love me if my name was Algernon?
I think I respect you, Ernest, and admire your character, but I'm afraid I should be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, I assume your rector here is very well versed with the rites and ceremonies of the church.
Oh yes, Dr. Chastity is the most learned man. He has never written a book, you can imagine how much he knows.
Well, yes, I must see him at once in an important business. I mean an important business. I shan't be away more than half an hour.
Considering we've been engaged for the last 2 months and I met you only today.
back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. Frozen by that. Today, Ernest proposed.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Oh, isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Ask the lady to come in here. Uncle Jack shouldn't be too long. And you can drink tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of those good elderly women who work with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is very forward of them.
Miss Fairfax,
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Kaur.
Cecily, huh? What a sweet name. I like you already, more than I can say. My first impressions of people are like home.
How nice of you to like me so much after we've known each other for such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
I think you will almost call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that's all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this may be a favorable opportunity for me to tell you who I am. My father is Lord Brown. You never heard of the Kaur, I suppose?
I do not think so.
Outside the family circle, the Kaur, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. But home seems to be the toughest sphere for the man. And indeed, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't quite like that. It makes a man so attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be rather short-sighted. So would you mind if I peered you a little more closely?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh no, I live here.
Really? Then your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years, resides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, in fact, not any relations.
Indeed.
Yes, my guardian is the assistant of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
That is strange. Mr. Worthing never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How singular. He grows more interesting hourly. But I'm bound to state, Cecily, that the news does not really inspire me with feelings of utmost delight. Don't get me wrong, Miss Cardew. I like you already more than I can say. But now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help express a wish that you are, well, not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly,
Pray do, Gwendolyn. I believe that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, they should be very candid.
well then, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish you were fully 42 and more than usually trained for your age. Ernest has a strong upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even then, we know this possible moral character. And themselves to be extremely susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, provides us with many painful examples of retired clergy. Indeed, if it were not so, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes?
But it isn't Ernest who is my guardian, it is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest's brother? Why, he never mentioned that he had one.
Well, I'm sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a very long time.
Ah, that makes it for it. And now that I think of it, I don't think I've ever heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems to be distasteful to most men. Cecily, you've lifted a load off my mind. I was beginning to grow almost anxious. But you're quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Yes, quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper will chronicle this fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married. My darling Cecily, you seem to be under some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
You are under some strange misconception, Fairfax. Ernest just proposed to me 10 minutes ago.
Well, that is certainly very curious, for he proposed to me yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I've never travelled down my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. Well then, I'm sorry for sending disappointment to you, Miss Cardew, but the prior case seems to rest with me.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, Gwendolyn, if it has caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
The poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise. I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever entanglement my poor boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it after we're married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a matter.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest? How dare you? This is no time to be wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
But I'm glad to say, Miss Cardew, that I've never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I late here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Yes, from top of one of the hills close by, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't imagine quite like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in Kaur.
Quite a delicate garden you have here, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country, except for the preposterous one on your head.
At least I still have mine, because you see, Miss Fairfax, that flowers in the country are as common as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot quite understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
I suppose I must offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax.
Yes, please. Detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is hardly fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter, Miss Fairfax?
Bread and butter, of course. Cake is rarely seen in the best houses these days.
I'm lucky, Miss Fairfax.
Yes, miss.
You have filled my tea with lots of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. Now wipe that smug smile off your face, you petulant girl. The moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I can't see why you would do something like that. Now I'm known for the gentleness of my nature, but I'm bound to state here that you're crossing a line.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of another girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
The moment I saw you, I knew there was something wrong. I knew you were false to me. I'm never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have other forms of similar nature to make in the neighborhood.
Honest, my own honest. But wait, I must ask you something. Are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
This Cecily, what could have put this idea into your pretty little head?
Oh, thank you. You may.
I knew there must have been some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arms are around your waist right now is my guardian, Mr. John Wilde.
I beg your pardon.
Yes, this is Uncle Jack.
Jack? Oh!
And here comes Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask you if you're married? If you're engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn.
No. Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
I knew there must be some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon? Are you called Algernon Moncrief?
I can't deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it. I could deny anything if I liked. But it is John. It has been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet old Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, won't you?
One question, and I would like to be allowed to my garden.
An excellent idea. Mr. Wilde, this is one question that I would like to put to you. Where is your brother, Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to each other. Ernest, it is of some importance for us to know where he is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is for the first time in my life that I've been forced to speak the truth. I have very little experience in doing so please excuse me. The fact is, I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother Kaur. In fact, I never had a brother. And I certainly don't intend to have a brother in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
You mean to say you never had a brother?
No, not even any brother.
It seems to me then, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
Yes. It isn't a very nice position a young girl should be reduced to suddenly, is it?
Let us go into the house. We will hardly venture to follow us there.
Yes, when is a coward young?
This is what you call bunburying, I suppose.
Oh yes, and a very good bunbury it is too.
But you are...
In fact, it's the most successful bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to bunbury here.
That's absurd. One has a right to bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious bunburist knows that.
Serious bunburist. Good heavens!
Well, one must be serious about something. I happen to be serious about bunbury. What on earth you are serious about, I haven't got the faintest idea. About everything, I should imagine. You've got such an absolutely trivial nature.
But the only small satisfaction I have in this whole wretched business is that your friend, is quite exposed. You won't be able to run down to country as often as you used to. And not a bad thing too.
Well, your brother is a little off color, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to disappear off to the town quite as often as your wicked custom. That's not a bad thing either.
Well, you deceiving a sweet, innocent girl like Miss Cardew is inexcusable, to say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Well, I can't see any possible excuse for your deceiving a clever, brilliant, thoroughly experienced girl like Miss Fairfax, to say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
Well, I love her. I just want to be married to her. That is all.
I adore Cecily. I want to be married to her too.
But there is no chance of you marrying Miss Cardew.
Well, I can't see that there's much chance of you, Jack, marrying Miss Fairfax.
Well, that is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. Very vulgar to talk about one's business. Only stockbrokers do that, and only at dinner parties.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins, when we're in this horrible situation? I just can't make out.
But I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would get on my curves.
Well, I said,
One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I said it is perfectly ridiculous of you eating muffins at all under the given circumstances.
I don't eat it. I don't like to eat it.
But why, I don't understand why you eat them in that greedy manner.
Jack, I thought you just said it's perfectly harmless to eat muffins.
I said it is perfectly harmless of you to eat muffins in the given circumstances. That is quite different.
Well, that may be, but the muffins are the same.
Jack, Archie, why don't you go?
Because I haven't had my dinner yet. I never go without my dinner. Nobody ever does that except vegetarians and people like that. And besides, I've made arrangements to meet Dr. Jasmine at 5:45. I'm going to be christened under the name of Ernest.
Well, I have made arrangements with Dr. Jasmine to be christened by the name of Ernest at 5:30. Quite deliberately. We both can't be christened Ernest. It is absurd. And in my case, I don't ever remember of having been christened. Whereas in your case, you have been christened.
Yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
But you have been christened. That is the more important thing.
Well, yes, but that's why I know my constitution can stand it. But on the other hand, if you're not sure that you've ever been christened, I think that you're venturing on it now is rather dangerous. It might make you rather unwell. You can hardly have forgotten that someone very closely connected with you was very nearly carried off to Paris by a severe chill.
But you said a severe chill isn't hereditary.
It wasn't before, I don't know now. Science is always making these wonderful advancements in things.
Only nonsense. Only nonsense.
Jack, you're on the muffins again. I wish to goodness you wouldn't eat them. Now there are only 4.5 left.
But I ate tea cake.
Why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served in your own house to your own guests? What notions of hospitality you have?
Haji, I wish to goodness you would go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
Because I haven't had my tea yet. And there's still quite a lot of muffins left. You mean Bunbury? No, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury is somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh yes, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I believe Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury, he quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of some revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
No, my dear Aunt Augusta. I mean, he was found out. The doctors found out that Bunbury could not live, so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he finally made up his mind and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That is my ward, Miss Cecily Cardew.
I'm engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Brackman.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air in this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seems to me to be considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part is not entirely out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I barely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families, or indeed persons, whose origin was in Terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, SW, Grammar Spa of Dorking, Surrey, and Dorset, York.
That sounds
sometimes not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have preserved the court records of those periods. They're open for your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
I also have, you will be pleased to hear, miscarriage certificates of birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and leasing, both the English and the German language.
Life crowded with incidents, I see, though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I myself am not in favor of premature experiences. Winterly, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I must ask whether Miss Cecily Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh yes, about £130,000 in the fight. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment. £130,000 under the funds. Miss Cardew is a most attractive young lady now that I look at it. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities, any of the ones that last and improve with time. Come over here, dear. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair is almost as though nature might have left it. But a thoroughly experienced French maid can soon alter all that. She produces a really marvellous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to Lady Lancing, and in 3 months, her own husband didn't know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kind of turn around, right? No, the side view is what I want. Yes. Quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points of our age are its want of principle and its want of profile. Chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. They're worn very high.
No, yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily? Oh no, Cecily is the dearest, sweetest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't care tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only those who can't get into it do that. Of course, dear child, you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. Indeed, when I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I never dreamt for a moment to let that stand in the way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Oh, well, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I suppose the marriage had better take place quite soon.
Well, thank you, Aunt Augusta.
I'm not in favor of long engagements, you see. They give the people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Pray excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting. But it's only fair to tell you that I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. And that consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. So what can one desire?
It may be very nice to have to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, but I don't approve of your nephew's character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Truthful? My nephew, Algernon? Impossible. He is an observer.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about this matter. On my temporary absence in London this afternoon, he obtained admission into my house on being my false brother. Under the assumed name, he drank a bottle of wine that I had specially been reserving for myself. What he did then is that he succeeded in alienating the affection of my only ward. He then stayed to tea and devoured every single mouth. What makes this conduct all the more heartless is the fact that he very well knows that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, that I do not intend to have a brother, not even of any kind.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
How extremely kind of you. But my decision is still unaltered. I still decline to give my consent.
Come over here, sweet child. How old are you, dear?
Well, I'm probably only 18, but I've been to 20 at the evening party.
You're perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at dinner parties. Well, it will not be very long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think your guardian's consent is after all a matter of any importance.
Pray excuse me for interrupting you again, but it's only fair for me to tell you that Miss Guardian does not come of age until she's 35, according to her grandfather.
That does not seem to me a grave objection. 25 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have of their own free choice remained 35 for years. I don't see why our own dear Cecily should not be even still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Angie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Well, of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt that instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Humphrey.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait till she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to show a somewhat impatient nature. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But my dear Lady Black, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you give your consent to my management, Gwendolyn, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
That a passionate celibacy is all that we can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolyn. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we're ordering this 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir? Is that not somewhat premature?
The moving gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age. Idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses.
So am I to understand that there are to be no christening this afternoon?
As things are now, Dr. Charlesworth, I do not think it would be of much practical value to either of us.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views that are refuted in 4 of my father's sermons. However, as your mood seems to be particularly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, as I have been informed, that for the past hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Did you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bradman, I am on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. This could be a matter of vital importance to both Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
She has been, for the last 3 years, Miss Cardew's valued companion and esteemed governess.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
Oh, she approaches. She is nice.
I was told you expected me in the west, dear Canon. I have been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism! number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was found standing all by itself at midnight in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained a manuscript of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Jasmine, I admit with shame that I do not know. The hearing facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day that you mentioned, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I also had with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag, in which I had intended to place a manuscript of a work of fiction that I had written during my few unoccupied hours. But in a moment of mental abstraction from which I can never forgive myself, I placed the manuscript in the basket and the baby in the handbag.
But where did you put that handbag, Miss Prism?
Do not ask me, Mr. Wilde.
I insist on knowing where you put that handbag. The happiness of more than one person lies on it.
I deposited the handbag in the cloakrooms of one of the larger railway stations in London.
Which railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton one.
Quentin, you will wait for me here. What, you?
Of course, dear.
What do you think all this means, Lady Brandon?
I dare not even suspect Dr. Chasuble. I can hardly tell you. Strange coincidences are not supposed to occur in families of my position. Neither thing.
Uncle Jack seems to be strangely agitated.
Your guardian seems to have a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They're very vulgar and often
It has stopped now.
I wish he would arrive at some conclusion.
Miss Prism, is this the handbag? Examine it carefully before you speak.
This seems to be mine. Oh yes, here is the injured receipt from the upsetting of a beverage. And here are my initials on the lock. This bag definitely is mine. I'm so relieved to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a convenience to be without it for so many years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes, mother.
Mr. Worthing, I'm unmarried.
I'm married. I do not deny it is a serious blow. But can't fight this by contact folly? Why should there be one love for man and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. Here is a woman who can tell you who you really are.
Very practical. I hate to seem inquisitive. But could you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algernon's brother? No, I'm a brother after all. I always said I had a brother. Justly, have you ever doubted I had a brother? Miss Lady Martin, my possible brother. Miss Prism, my possible brother. Dr. Jasmine, my possible brother. Prism, Justly, my possible brother. Mary, my possible brother. Quentin, my possible brother. You don't, Algern, you have to treat me as a little boy. You haven't done that all your life.
Well, not till today, old boy. I did my best, but I was out of practice.
My own, but wait, what old are you, now that you've become someone else?
But is your decision on my name irrevocable, I suppose?
Well, it is. I never change, except in my affections. What a noble nature you have, William.
Aunt Augusta. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and dirty parents.
There had been christened, that's it. But what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
And what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was, but I have no doubt he had one. He was a bit eccentric, I admit, but that was only the name.
I just remember what your father's Christian name was.
Dear boy, I was hardly on speaking terms with him. He died before I was a year old.
I'm innocent that period, won't it?
The general was essentially a man of peace, but I have no doubt that his name would appear in the military records of the period.
These are the army records of those periods. Generals Malum, Mawson, Margley, what ghastly names do these people have? Mosby, Bisbee, Mose, Moncrief. Lieutenant 1840, Captain Lieutenant Colonel, General 1869, Christian name, Ernest Charles. How could you ever doubt my name is Ernest? It naturally has to be Ernest.
It has to be Ernest, my dear. Yes, I recall now that the general's Christian name was Ernest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
Gwendolyn, darling.
Letitia.
Frederick, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, it is for the first time I realize the vital importance of being earnest.
Moncrief. Shweta Kushal.
Appearances in no particular order, Mr. Siddharth Tiwari has lain and